I didn't think a calendar invite could make your stomach drop. It was 9:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, mentally sorting the day into neat little boxes: client call, budget review, vendor follow-up, when an Outlook notification popped up like it owned my heart rate. Legal, quick question, 15 min. Attendees: me, corporate counsel, someone from compliance I'd never met. No agenda, no notes, just a Teams link and that sterile subject line. I stared at it longer than I should have, because in my experience, when legal says quick, it means they already know the answer. They just want to see if you'll lie. I clicked accept anyway. I didn't have a reason not to. At that point, I still believed this was going to be some routine thing. Maybe a standard vendor contract needing clarification. Maybe a clause we forgot to attach. I'm not naive, but I'm also not paranoid. I've been in corporate long enough to know that paperwork is half the job and panic is usually wasted energy. Then I joined the call. 2 cameras were off. One was on. A woman in her late 30s, clean blazer, neutral wall behind her, looked straight into the camera like she'd practiced doing it without blinking. Her name tag said A. Patel, corporate counsel. "Thanks for hopping on, Ethan," she said, calm, professional, not warm. "No problem," I replied. "What's up?" She didn't answer right away. She clicked something. I heard the faint sound of a document being opened. The silence stretched for just a beat too long. Then she shared her screen. A contract filled my monitor. A real one. Thick, formatted signature blocks. Exhibits. The kind with enough legal language to make your eyes glaze over. She scrolled to the last page and stopped. There, in black ink, in a clean cursive that wasn't mine, was my name. Not typed. Signed, Ethan Rivera. Title, Senior Account Manager at Stores. Last Friday, my throat tightened. I actually leaned closer to the screen, like the pixels would rearrange themselves if I stared hard enough. "That's not my signature," I said automatically. A. Patel didn't react. She didn't nod, didn't frown, just watched me like she was taking a measurement. "Okay," she said. "That's what I needed to clarify." I blinked. "Clarify what?" She scrolled up to the header. The vendor name hit me like a slap, because I recognized it immediately. Westbridge Solutions, of course. Westbridge had been my boss's pet project for months. A glossy vendor with a slick sales deck and a CEO who talked like he'd memorized every startup cliché. They were supposed to streamline our client onboarding pipeline. That was the pitch. Less friction, more automation, faster conversions. What it really meant was this. My boss wanted the deal closed before the quarter ended. He wanted it on his scoreboard. And last Friday had been the day he was practically vibrating with pressure. Yeah, I remember it clearly because he'd stopped by my desk twice in 1 hour, which he never did unless he needed something. My boss, Mark Holloway, was one of those managers who wore confidence like cologne. Expensive suit, 2 white teeth, always in motion, always circling back. He wasn't a cartoon villain. He was worse. He was believable. He'd started the morning with his usual quick sink and then leaned against my cubicle wall like we were friends. "Ethan, we're close," he'd said, tapping a folder against his palm. "Westbridge is ready to sign. Procurement's being procurement. Legal's being legal. But we can't let this slip." I'd looked up from my laptop. "What do you need from me?" "Just keep them warm," he said. "Be responsive. If they send anything, flag it." That seemed normal. My job was client-facing. Vendor communication was part of the grind. But then later, after lunch, he came back and his tone changed. He shut his hand around the folder like it might run away. "Hey," he said quietly, "I might need you to move fast on something." I remember the exact words because they didn't fit him. Mark never asked. He usually told. "What is it?" I asked. He gave me this half smile, the kind that's supposed to make you feel included. "It's just the signature page," he said. "Legal's going to bless it, but Westbridge wants something in motion. It's a standard services agreement. No weird stuff. We've already negotiated the main terms. I stared at him. You want me to sign it before legal approves it? He shook his head immediately. No, no, not like that. I'm just saying, if we need to show intent to proceed, we can get it over the line. It's internal. We can always amend. I'd been in enough contract workflows to know how that sentence was supposed to land. He was trying to make it sound harmless, administrative, a formality. But I also knew one thing that had been drilled into me since my first corporate job. If your name is on a contract, your name is on the risk. So I told him, I'm not signing anything that legal hasn't reviewed. His smile didn't drop, but something behind his eyes cooled off. Of course, he said. I didn't mean literally right now. Just be available. Westbridge is pushing. You know how it is. He left. I watched him walk away, felt that faint discomfort in my chest, and then forced myself back into work. Because that's what you do in an office. You swallow weird moments and label them politics, so you can finish your day. And now, on this call, my signature was there anyway. A. Patel clicked out of screen share, bringing her face back to full size. I want to be very clear, she said. This agreement was executed and sent to the vendor. We received a countersigned copy Monday morning. I felt heat climb up the back of my neck. Sent by who? That's what we're trying to reconstruct, she said, and that was the first time her tone sharpened. I opened my mouth, closed it, then said, I didn't sign that. I didn't authorize anyone to sign that. A pause. Another click. Her eyes dipped, reading something on her side. Then she looked back up, steady. And this is the only question I need you to answer right now, Ethan. My fingers tightened around my coffee mug, without realizing it. She said, Did you ever give Mark Holloway permission to sign on your behalf? The room went quiet in my headset. Even my laptop fan seemed louder, because that one question told me everything. It wasn't about whether the contract was valid yet. It wasn't about fixing a mistake. It was about whether they could argue I'd agreed to this, whether my boss could hide behind the idea that I'd okayed it verbally, and whether my name was about to become the shield he stood behind when things went wrong. I swallowed, stared into the camera, and answered carefully. No, I said. I never gave him permission. Not verbally, not in writing, not ever. A. Patel held my gaze, then nodded once, as if confirming something she already suspected. Understood, she said. Thank you. Stay available today. There may be follow-up. The call ended. Just like that. No explanation, no reassurance. No, we'll handle it. I sat there in my chair, staring at my blank screen, feeling that cold, sinking certainty settle into place. Mark didn't just cross a line. He picked my name up like a tool, used it, and put it back down, assuming I'd never notice until it was too late. And I realized something else, almost as chilling as the signature itself. If legal was asking me that question, it meant someone was already preparing a story. And in that story, I was going to be the one holding the pen. I didn't confront Mark right away. That surprised me later, because in my head, I like to think of myself as someone who addresses things directly. But when something feels off in a corporate way, not loud, not obvious, just quietly dangerous, you don't rush, you watch. So I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked to the kitchen like nothing had happened. I refilled my coffee I didn't want, nodded at 2 coworkers, laughed at a Slack message I barely read. From the outside, I looked normal. Inside, I was replaying one sentence on a loop. Did you ever give Mark permission to sign on your behalf? That wasn't a question you ask unless someone's already claiming the answer is yes. I went back to my desk and pulled up my sent mail, then my inbox, then my Slack history with Mark. I wasn't panicking. I was cataloging. There's a difference. Panic scrambles you. Cataloging sharpens you. I searched his name, keywords, dates, anything that could even suggest consent. Nothing. No, go ahead. No, sounds good. No, I'm fine with it. The closest thing was a message from the previous Thursday. when Westbridge had emailed late asking about timing expectations. I'd forwarded it to Mark with one line. FYI, they're pushing again. That was it. No approval, no ambiguity, no wiggle room. At 10:42 a.m., Mark pinged me. Hey, you free for a quick chat? There it was. I stared at the message for a few seconds before replying. Not too fast, not too slow. Sure, I typed. Want to stop by? 3 minutes later, he appeared at my desk with the same easy smile he always wore. Like this was just another Tuesday, and we were just two guys managing optics. Got a sec? He asked. I swiveled my chair toward him. What's up? He leaned against the divider, arms crossed, casual. Too casual. I heard legal might have looped you in on the Westbridge paperwork, he said. Interesting phrasing. Might have. As if he wasn't sure. As if he hadn't caused it. They did, I said. And? He asked, eyebrows lifting slightly. All good? I held his gaze. They showed me a signed contract. His smile tightened. Not gone, but adjusted. Right, he said. That. I waited. Silence is a tool. People rushed to fill it. They needed something to keep the vendor from walking, he continued. Procurement was dragging, legal was dragging, and Westbridge was getting antsy. I didn't want the deal to die over red tape. You signed my name, I said. He exhaled like I'd accused him of borrowing a pen without asking. I signed for you, he corrected. Big difference. There isn't, I said. Not legally. He waved that off. Come on, Ethan. This happens all the time. It's internal. No one's going to come after you over this. That word again. Internal. It was the same word people use right before something explodes, and they pretend they didn't know it could. You didn't ask me, I said, and I explicitly told you I wouldn't sign without legal review. Mark straightened a little, not defensive, annoyed. I didn't think you'd want to get hung up on technicalities, he said. You're senior enough to understand how these things work. That irritated me more than the signature, because it wasn't an apology. It was a reframing. He was trying to make my caution sound immature. This isn't a technicality, I said. It's my name. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. Look, he said. If legal's asking questions, I'll handle it. I'll tell them it was my call. You don't need to complicate things. There it was. The first attempt. Not to fix the problem, but to manage the story. I already told them I didn't authorize it, I said. His eyes flicked, just for a second. Enough to notice. You said that? He asked. Yes. The temperature dropped. He smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. Well, he said. That might slow things down unnecessarily. I didn't create that risk, I replied. You did. He stared at me for a beat, then laughed softly. You're taking this personally, he said. Let's not turn it into something it doesn't need to be. That was when I understood something important. He wasn't worried about whether he'd crossed a line. He was worried about whether I'd stand still long enough for him to step behind me. I'm not comfortable with my name on a document I didn't sign, I said. Legal needs to correct the record. Mark pushed off the divider and straightened his jacket. Let me talk to them first, he said. No need to escalate. Escalate? Another word people use when they're already falling? He walked away before I could respond, like the conversation was over because he'd decided it was. I sat there for a moment, watching his back disappear into the aisle. Then I opened a new document. Not to vent, not to speculate, just to write down facts, dates, times, exact phrases, what he'd said, what I'd said, who'd been copied on what, because something had shifted. This wasn't about a contract anymore. It was about whether the company would quietly accept a forged signature or whether someone would need a clean explanation for why it happened, and I had a feeling I knew which version Mark was hoping for. The thing about realizing you're the liability isn't panic, it's clarity. That afternoon, after Mark walked away, I didn't feel angry. I felt focused in a way I hadn't before, like a room finally coming into sharp relief after someone turns on the lights. Every conversation I replayed sounded different now. Every we Every just move it forward, every casual assumption suddenly had weight. I didn't know it yet, but that shift, that moment of clarity, was the point of no return. I pulled up the contract again. Not the PDF legal had shown me, but the version attached to the email thread Mark had forwarded to Westbridge. Late Friday evening, I hadn't opened it then. I opened it now. Same document, same signature. But the metadata told a quieter story. Created Thursday afternoon, edited Friday at 4:58 p.m., sent at 5:12 p.m. After I'd logged off, I checked my badge logs. I wasn't in the building. Then I checked DocuSign access records. My account hadn't initiated anything. No IP match. No device match. Nothing. Someone had used a different account. I stopped there, because the instinct when you discover wrongdoing is to dig until you feel righteous. That's a mistake. Righteousness is emotional. Evidence is procedural. So instead of digging deeper, I started building a timeline. Not a narrative, a timeline. Thursday, Westbridge pushes for commitment. Friday morning, Mark asks me to be available. Friday afternoon, I refuse to sign. Friday evening, contract sent with my forged signature. Monday morning, countersigned copy received. Tuesday, legal calls me in. That was the spine. Then I layered behavior onto it. Mark avoiding email after Friday. Mark insisting on verbal alignment. Mark framing the signature as internal. Mark trying to speak to legal for me. None of it was explosive. That was the problem. It was clean, smooth, plausible. That's how people get burned. Not by chaos, but by competence aimed in the wrong direction. At 2:06 p.m., legal emailed me again. Can you confirm your role in vendor authorization for Westbridge, specifically approval thresholds and signature authority? This wasn't casual follow-up. This was compliance stepping in quietly. I answered precisely. My role allows me to recommend vendors. I do not have independent authority to execute contracts without legal approval. I did not execute or authorize execution of this agreement. No commentary. No emotion. 10 minutes later, compliance replied with a calendar invite. Internal review, Westbridge. Mark was on it. So was procurement. So was finance. So was someone from risk. That's when I felt it. The first real crack. Because Mark hadn't controlled this escalation, and worse, he hadn't warned me it was coming. The meeting was scheduled for the next morning. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was afraid, but because my brain kept connecting dots. If Mark had signed my name, he needed two things to happen. One, the deal had to move forward fast enough that no one scrutinized the signature. Two, if it was scrutinized, he needed plausible deniability. That's where I came in, a senior employee, client-facing, known to be responsive, easy to frame as informally aligned. I wasn't the mastermind. I was the buffer. That realization changed how I felt about everything, because I'd spent years thinking loyalty meant smoothing things over, being flexible, giving people the benefit of the doubt, but loyalty only works when it runs both ways. And Mark had already decided which way it would run. The next morning, before the meeting, he called me, not on Teams, on my phone. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Hey," he said, voice lower than usual. "Just wanted to sync before this thing gets blown out of proportion." "I'm listening," I said. "I talked to legal," he continued. "They're being overly cautious. If we present this as a process hiccup, it'll die quickly." Process hiccup. He was still trying to shrink it. "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That you were aligned," he said smoothly. "That the signature was procedural." There it was. "I didn't say that," I replied. A pause. Barely half a second, but it mattered. "Right," he said. "But you didn't object either." "I did," I said. "On Friday." "You told me you wouldn't sign," he corrected. Not that I couldn't proceed. That was the moment. That was when I understood the entire game. He wasn't lying outright. He was redefining the past, just enough to stand on it. I won't back that version, I said calmly. His tone hardened, not angry, controlled. Ethan, he said, this isn't about versions. It's about keeping momentum. No, I replied, it's about accountability. Another pause, longer this time. They thought I was gone, he said finally, his voice cool now. But this isn't something you want to be stubborn about. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, phone still in my hand, heart steady. That was the micro-catharsis, the quiet one. The moment I stopped trying to be reasonable with someone who had already chosen his outcome. From that point on, I didn't need to confront him. I just needed to stay visible, accurate, and impossible to overwrite. And for the first time since legal showed me that signature, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was ready. By the time the internal review meeting started, the room already felt wrong. Not tense, not hostile, just careful. Everyone joined on time. Cameras on. Backgrounds neutral. Corporate body language turned up to maximum. Straight backs, minimal nods, hands folded where they could be seen. This wasn't a brainstorming call. This was a call where people chose words, the way you choose shoes on ice. Mark joined last. He smiled when he did, gave a short wave and said, "Morning, everyone," like this was a routine checkpoint he'd scheduled himself. It wasn't. A. Patel was there. So was someone from compliance, different from the one on my first call. This one introduced herself as Monica, spoke slowly, and didn't smile at all. "We're here to clarify execution authority and process adherence related to the Westbridge Agreement," she said. "This is not disciplinary. This is fact-finding." That sentence landed exactly where it was supposed to. Mark nodded immediately. "Of course. Happy to clear things up." The first 10 minutes were harmless. Dates, scope, business rationale. Mark spoke confidently, laying out the urgency, the vendor pressure, the quarter-end constraints. He sounded competent, convincing even. Then Monica asked the question that mattered. Who executed the agreement on behalf of the company? Mark didn't miss a beat. "Ethan," he said, gesturing slightly toward my square on the screen. "He's the account owner." Every eye moved to me. I didn't interrupt. I let the silence do the work. "That's incorrect," I said calmly. "My name is on the agreement, but I did not execute it." Mark tilted his head like he was surprised I'd chosen that phrasing. "Ethan was aligned," he said. "We discussed moving forward. I acted to keep momentum." Monica leaned forward slightly. "Mark," she said, "did Ethan instruct you to sign his name?" Mark smiled again, smaller this time. "Not explicitly," he said, "but there was implicit approval." There it was, the word he'd been building toward. "Can you explain what you mean by implicit?" she asked. Mark glanced at me, quick, controlled, then back to her. "We talked through the terms," he said. "There were no objections. In situations like this, we sometimes proceed operationally." "Operationally?" I spoke before anyone could jump in. "I objected," I said. "On Friday, I told Mark I would not sign or authorize signature without legal approval." Mark's jaw tightened. "I recall you saying you wouldn't sign personally," he replied. "Not that I couldn't." That reframing again, same move, same line. Monica looked down at her notes. "Ethan," she said, "did you ever authorize Mark or anyone to sign on your behalf?" "No," I said, "at any point." A. Patel cleared her throat. "For clarity," she said, "the DocuSign record shows the agreement was executed using Mark's admin credentials, not Ethan's." That was new information. Mark blinked, just once, but it mattered. "I had access to expedite," he said quickly. "That's standard." "For whose benefit?" Monica asked. "To prevent delays," he said. "For the company." "And were you aware," she continued, "that signing another employee's name without written authorization constitutes a policy violation?" The room went still. Mark straightened in his chair. "I wouldn't characterize it that way," he said. This was a judgment call. That was the moment the tone changed. Because compliance doesn't care about judgment calls. They care about controls. Monica nodded slowly. Understood, she said. Then we'll need to review all correspondence, access logs, and approval chains related to this execution. Mark's smile finally disappeared. Is that really necessary? He asked. This seems like overkill. No, she replied. It's procedure. The meeting wrapped shortly after. No conclusions, no accusations, just next steps. When the call ended, my inbox started filling up. Procurement asking for documentation. Legal requesting confirmation in writing. Risk scheduling a follow-up. Mark didn't message me, not that day, not the next morning either. Instead, I heard through someone else that Westbridge had been told the deal was temporarily paused pending internal review. Their CEO wasn't happy. They started emailing higher up the chain. That pressure had nowhere to go, because it wasn't mine. 3 days later, I got another calendar invite. Westbridge, status update. Mark wasn't on it. Neither was his director, only legal. Compliance. HR. That was the silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. Monica spoke first. The agreement has been suspended, she said. The execution was deemed unauthorized. She paused, then added, There are personnel matters we can't discuss, but your cooperation is noted. I didn't feel relief yet, just gravity, because I knew this wasn't chaos. This was consequence, finally catching up to momentum. And for the first time since this started, I understood something clearly. Mark hadn't lost control because I attacked him. He lost control because he'd built speed on top of a lie, and eventually, speed exposes everything. The outcome didn't arrive with drama. No announcement, no apology tour, no all-hands email about values. It came the way real consequences usually do, quietly, through calendar changes and access revocations. The Monday after the Westbridge deal was officially suspended, I noticed Mark's name was gone from 2 standing meetings. By Wednesday, his Slack status had gone dark. No out-of-office message. No back Friday. Just absence. People noticed. They didn't ask. That alone told me enough. Later that week, A. Patel asked if I had 15 minutes. This time, the invite had an agenda. Closure, Westbridge review. When I joined, she didn't share her screen. Thank you for your cooperation throughout this process, she said. I want to formally confirm a few outcomes. She spoke carefully, precisely. The agreement with Westbridge has been voided. The vendor has been notified that execution authority was misrepresented. There will be no liability attributed to you, and the record will reflect that you did not authorize or sign the contract. I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't realized I was holding. Additionally, she continued, an internal determination was made regarding policy violations. Appropriate action has been taken. She didn't say Mark's name. She didn't need to. What about my role? I asked. You're clear, she said. More than that, you handled this correctly. Not everyone does. When the call ended, I didn't celebrate. I just sat there for a minute, staring at my desktop, letting the quiet settle. Because this wasn't a win. It was a restoration. 2 weeks later, HR reached out, not to reprimand, to discuss alignment. They moved my reporting line. New manager, new visibility, no fanfare, but also no ambiguity. I wasn't being sidelined. I was being protected. Mark never contacted me again. I heard fragments the way you do in offices. Personal reasons, policy issue. Left the company. Westbridge, for their part, disappeared from our systems entirely. Another vendor filled the gap. Slower, cleaner, properly approved. Life went on, but something in me didn't go back to how it was before. I used to think professionalism meant absorbing discomfort so other people could move faster. That loyalty meant flexibility, that if you were reasonable long enough, the system would notice. What I learned instead was simpler and harder. Your name is not a courtesy, it's a boundary. Once someone decides they can use it without asking, they've already decided how expendable you are. I didn't expose Mark. I didn't trap him. I didn't raise my voice or threaten anything. I just refused to carry a story that wasn't true. And in the end, that was enough. Now, when legal sends a calendar invite with no agenda, my stomach doesn't drop anymore, because I know exactly where I stand, and so does everyone else.